All right, here's what happened, guys. I've learned in the last decade as an American, and then I started over a decade ago as a small business owner. Uh, I've learned that not everything is as it seems, and especially in the last year, I've really realized like it's taken it to a whole nother level for me. Being curious and asking questions when you don't understand something, it seems reasonable. I would say that's reasonable, but it's interesting because it's until then, until more powerful people don't want you to know something, that it starts to seem unreasonable. You may have experienced this for yourself. If someone tells you you shouldn't know about that or ask more questions, that's a sign to me to be more curious, to ask more questions. In the past, I would just say, okay, I guess I'm not supposed to go and explore this. But that is actually most likely high probability that if you ask more questions, you be more and you are more curious, you're on the path to figuring out the truth in something you don't understand. Now that truth, it's interesting because you think about, well, why would someone hide something? Like for me, I don't think you have good intentions if you're trying to hide something that people are being curious about, asking questions about. It's interesting to understand that when it comes to if especially like someone tells you you shouldn't know about that or stop asking questions. It's like, well, why? What's going on here? Because I can understand privacy and the importance of privacy, and I respect that for privacy. But then when it's something bigger or public, it's involving the public, or I think about it in different industries or small businesses, why not ask the question? Why not explore more of what's going on here? Because for me, that shows that there may be some bad intentions. When someone is trying to hide something, what's going on there? So the truth, it can be overwhelming, and it can even be shocking, and it can give you peace. And for me, I want to help Americans, small business owners, to understand the truth. And I said that last time in my last show, that what you can expect is me to seek out the truth, and then when I make a mistake, admitting that to you. So welcome back to the show. I am excited for this first time going live. So cool to do this, taking it to the next level with this show. Excited to be able to read your comments, questions you have, your thoughts, what resonates, what you disagree with, what you're like, you should explore that more. I'm excited, and please share this with friends and family to continue to grow this movement. Because for me, to tell you the truth here is, it's a small movement for the big problems you think about that's out there for our country. I mean, you think about the over $38 trillion in debt. So many of our cities and towns falling apart. People are struggling. The problems can seem overwhelming and seem like there's no hope. And I think about that over decades and years. If you're trying to get a certain result and you're not getting that, you can become hopeless. And then from there, you can experience a lot more pain. And so that's where, with this show, is to bring more hope to you. And then for this movement nationally to continue to grow, because it's a determined movement. That's for sure. For the people, small business owners that are part of this movement already, for the supporters of small businesses, this movement is a determined movement, because I do believe America's future is a small business renaissance. I don't buy into this narrative that America is inevitably doomed to collapse that I get from people that are decades older than me, because I'm like, well, our ruling class for decades sold out our future to China, globalist corporations, and self-interest lobbyists. So it's convenient that you're saying that it's just doomed inevitably to collapse. I'm like, we as Americans can change that. We can. And so I refuse to buy into that narrative. And instead, I believe we got to get to work. We got a lot of work ahead of us to be able to fight for our republic, to preserve the freedoms that we have as Americans, and especially this freedom for you to own your small business. Because there are evil forces, and And at first for me, it was shocking actually to learn about this. I didn't realize that you have your eyes closed and you're focused on the business. You just want to grow the business. And I know how easy it can be to just stay in your own world, ignore everything that's happening on a national conversation, a national level for what's going on, and just continue to one, create profit for your business, so your business can continue to sustain itself. Then also your needs are being met, your family's needs, if you have family, are being met. Those are all important. But to lose this freedom to own your business, there are evil forces at work to try to make that happen. I think about Marxists, and I think about globalists too. And there's been a lot of talk about socialism. I talked about that in the last show. And I think about this, like, where the roads lead is to the abolish of private property, which is your freedom to own your small business. And I do not want to see that happen. Absolutely not. That is a freedom that we have to preserve. And so that's going on in national conversation on a national level. And so there's got to be this waking up that has to happen with small businesses or small business owners and their teams, is to understand what is going on. And my hope with this show is to help you out with that, to share with you what I'm focused on, what topics I'm interested in that are coming up that are affecting and that can impact small businesses, and then be able to talk to you more about the context in this show tonight about why the hell am I doing this? Why do I care about this? Because the truth is, I don't want to dwell on it too much, but it is hard to step in and seek out the truth. That is hard. It goes back to, it's overwhelming and it's shocking. And for me, on an individual level, with the mission of Make Burnout Extinct, in order to make this happen for America's future to be a small business renaissance, there's two things that have to unfold. One, on an individual level, you've got to not let stress control you. We can have a ton of input coming in, and it can be draining as a small business owner. And then, you just think about that if you're supporting small businesses, you can feel drained too. And so that can't happen on an individual level. And I will tell you, it is absolutely possible to make burnout extinct on that individual level. But then what it does for you is it gives you the energy and the space to then realize what is going on in the national conversation, and then to be able to share your voice in the national conversation. That is something I feel is so important to have happen, because there are 33 million small businesses that are out there that employ 45% of the private workforce. This has a big impact on our economy and on our society. And so for me, what I discovered along the way in my, since starting my first business over a decade ago as a DJ, and then just as I said, this past year, I have realized that not everything is as it seems. I look at when it comes to social media highlight reel. I mean, you can relate to this, right? Highlight reel, people are saying, "Oh, life is great," or "I'm so happy with my partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife." And then next thing you know, divorce happens, breakup. Life is terrible. And so I know you can relate to that on some level, either knowing someone or you experienced it where you've seen that, where it's just not as it seems. It's this highlight reel. And we've gotten that message a ton, right? So like already that is your example of like, not everything is as it seems. And then diving deeper into then business promises. As a small business owner, when I first got started, I didn't really know what the hell, what I was doing. I didn't know what to expect. And so you're looking for people to guide you along the way. And then that's where you can fall into some traps where someone will promise you something and then they don't deliver on it. That could be a service or a product that they're providing that you pay for. And I've spent thousands of dollars on things that didn't work out. The promise was not delivered. And so then that was a moment to realize not everything is as it seems out there. And I know for your specific industry, as a small business owner, you can relate to that. You have those companies that you probably, you know very well, that are saying things that just are not true, literally creating these extraordinary promises and then not delivering on them. and they can pop up here and there, and they have bad intentions. And so I know it can be, I think about that for me, especially. And then I know with other conversations with the small business owners that really care about their communities, they don't want to believe that that's the thing. They kind of want to ignore that and be like, that's not in my industry. I mean, like that, you realize it's there, but don't want to put your focus towards that. You want to be like, I want to focus on serving the people that I can support through the service or the products. So I understand that, but it's important to recognize that that's there, because it goes back to the context here. And then I think even deeper on a national level for what we've all experienced as Americans, which is COVID-19. The shame that came up for people that were talking about how this could be a leak from a lab, the shame that was put on, like, don't ask questions, don't be curious here. To then now, this year, the National Intelligence came out with an unclassified document that shows, and again, it's a confusing document. I mean, you can't make it more confusing. Like, you think you make it simpler in how you're explaining this to someone, but what I found out was, there's one section here that says 4 IC elements in the National Intelligence Council assessed with low confidence that it was most likely caused by natural exposure for COVID. And then you have one here for quote, one IC element assesses with moderate confidence that, and then here for the rest of it is that the first human infection was a result of laboratory associated incident. So then you're like, okay, well, there's one agency that's assessing moderate confidence that most likely was from a lab. So then it's like, well, why did all these people get shamed for asking questions or being curious? And so that was a moment of not everything is as it seems. And then I go to RFK Jr. And it was interesting because I really resonated with some of his points, specifically about making vaccines safer. And then I would listen to that. I hear that. And then I would hear mainstream media saying that he's anti-vax. And I'm like, wait, no, he wants to make them safer, is what I'm hearing. And so that was another moment where the wool was taken off of my eyes. And I was like, oh, this is how it's working. This is what's going on here. And it comes back. I keep coming back to this. There is power, and then the rest of us. And when you realize that that's this game that's going on, things start to make a lot more sense. The other one is chronic disease epidemic. Think about that with the pharmaceutical industry to the food industry, the effects. I mean, there's so many other industries that can be involved in that. I think about even the farming industry is another one relating to food. But you look at if you look at the chronic disease epidemic, and you can look this up again, you can look up the unclassified national intelligence document for COVID-19. You can just type that in online. And same with the chronic disease epidemic. It is an epidemic that's gained a lot of traction, but it required people to speak up about this and share that. And so that was another moment of realizing, well, why were people not asking questions? Why were people being shamed to be curious, or being shamed for being curious? And so it starts to get you to question things. And that is something with this show that I want to make sure I'm getting through to you, is the importance of questioning and being curious and wanting to understand. Because I want to understand how it all works. I felt that there's things just don't make sense. You're looking around, you're like, things just don't make sense. I don't get this. Why is this the way it is? And it can be easy to just push it off and say, I'll get to another day, another year, decade, and then just try to keep pushing it down. But I know for me, at least, it kept coming back up. And then when you start to understand how insane some of these things are that are out there for the truth, and how shocking and how overwhelming, and I'll get into more of that in this show and in future nights. Yes, it's all of those, but then what I have felt is it's giving me peace. It's giving me realization of oh, that feeling I had, I was onto something. And that gut, trusting your gut, is so important. really when you have to peel back the layers with trusting your gut. I think about that with business decisions in your small business, to how you're navigating conversations with, if it's team members, to the community at large. You've got to peel back the layers of anxiety that you could feel, that you might think is your gut saying, oh, don't actually say this truth, but really, deep down you have to say that truth. Or if it's the hard conversation of saying, okay, this person is not a good fit for the company, I got to have the conversation and let them know what is going on, and hopefully they can change, or it's that time to let them go. But those layers that got to get peeled back of like, I keep pushing this off, but I know I have to have this hard conversation. So it's similar. As once you go through those layers, you get to the point you realize, okay, this is the gut feeling, and trusting that and believing in that. And it is this sensation of, in my body at least, where it's like like you feel a ping, or like a pinch, or it feels like, a little like needle in your stomach. Like, I mean, not literally, but figuratively is a feeling. And that's where you're like, oh, wait, let me pause here. Why is that feeling coming up? What's coming up here? Because I may not be understanding something, and I need to explore this more. I need to know what's going on. And then from there, you can start to understand. I think about that in different industries. You have it within your industries as small business. You understand the power players. The top big companies in your industry, and then the rest of us. Think about the power, and then the rest of us. And for me, what gives me a lot of hope with small businesses, and I want to get into this more throughout the week, is it's the small businesses that care about their community that they're part of. Okay. I think about that on the local level, cities and towns. When you care about the community, if you could be invested in your time, your energy, your money into the community, you're going to want to make it better. And that, I believe, then can make our country a lot better. Because as I said, there are many cities and towns that are falling apart, where there isn't care. Like, it's almost like not cool to care about wanting to improve your city or your town. You're just kind of like, this is what it is. And I travel a lot, so I'm able to visit different cities and towns, and having conversations, it's like realizing, like, what's going on here? Like, it becomes this like, oh, it's just hopeless. It's not possible. Nothing's going to change. And again, as I said, I don't buy that. I don't buy it. Yes, it's a lot of hard work. Yes, there are people that have been at it for decades. I understand that. So we need more people to support them that are there. And that goes back to small businesses, because you have a powerful impact on the local community. You really do. And you got to remember that. Okay? Because I know, especially during the days where it's really a struggle, you got to remember how powerful your voice really is. And it becomes even more powerful on the local level. And so that gives me a lot of hope. And I want to get into that more specifically in relating to health moving forward. And then specifically an industry I want to focus on later on this week. It's the industry, it's a farming industry. And then looking at small family farms. It was interesting to find this stat. And I asked Gronk this here, of like the total small family farms. And what I found out was that it's 86% of all farms are small family farms. And for me, I want to get into, understanding and getting curious more about what's going on here with the supply chain. Okay, how can we localize more small family farms to support their local communities? Because one area that I focused on was researching more about cattle and beef, and what that's like of raising cattle. And then sometimes the cattle is born in one town, or not sometimes, a lot of times the cattle is born in one town, in one state, and then is moved to a whole other state. For when it comes to growing, to get to a point where then it goes into these processing plants. And there's certain states in the U.S. that are predominantly focused on this. I think one of them is Texas. Texas is one of them. But it was fascinating to learn this. Of like, wait a second. So you're telling me cattle is raised in Virginia, and the majority of that cattle does not live out its life in Virginia. Fascinating. Why is that? That's something that I'm excited to explore more about and get curious about. or get more curious about it and be able to share that with you, because it's understanding how can we change that? How could we improve that? Because for me, that just doesn't make any sense. Besides, besides certain companies wanting to stay in power or having more influence over the industry, it just doesn't make sense to me from the community at large that when it comes to the cattle, why is it that a cattle, when they're raised in one state, doesn't live out its life in that state, and then the residents of that state who want beef aren't eating that beef? And of course, there's a supply chain. You got the big four that I'm learning about with the processing plants, and then you look at how it's the cost associated with this. So it's interesting to notice the players and to explore more about that and figure out what could be ways to improve this for, especially I think about small family farms. And where are there regulations that may be unnecessary regulations or don't make sense for regulations? That's something else to think about. So I get really excited for where this show can go. I appreciate you coming in live to be able to experience this with me, to ask your questions. There are going to be a lot of interesting topics moving forward. I'm excited for the conversations to be had. I think it goes back to this freedom that we have, freedom of speech, being able to share your opinions, share your views, share information that you find out. I welcome disagreement. I do. I think that allows us for the potential to learn from each other. We're coming from good faith. And so I want to make sure, if you disagree, being able to voice that and learning more about why you disagree, where that's coming from. And then for those that do agree, I'm open to hearing that as well. I think it'd be interesting to know why you agree, or what you thought was what resonated with you from this too. So excited to see you, to talk to you again soon, or connect with you again soon. The sign offs here. I'm trying to figure out the sign off, but excited for us to reconnect again soon. Good night.